Welcome to Egypt. This is probably one of the most divisive countries maybe we've been to so far on this trip, and not because of any political issues or anything like that, but just in terms of tourism. Everything that we read while planning for this trip basically said that Egypt is a place that a lot of people would not come again. Second on that list was Morocco, which we're actually going to in a couple of weeks, but we're getting our feet wet with Egypt.
This is simply going to be a vlog about our experience in Egypt. So we're going to temples, we're on a Nile cruise right now, we are shopping with street vendors, we're doing all of the Egypty things that most people come here to do. We're walking through the streets of Cairo, we went to the pyramids of Giza. We just wanted to give you a first-hand experience look at if it's true, if you should or should not come to Egypt. We actually have a really nice little room on this boat. When we checked in, they said that we got upgraded, and I think we did.
We're currently sailing from Aswan to Luxor, but on the way we're stopping and doing one overnight stay near Kamombo, which is the temple that we're on the way to now. It is 103 degrees outside, which is why we are parked inside with both air conditioners running because it is so incredibly hot. Even sitting near the window, you just feel how intense the sun is, so it feels really nice to actually have this upgraded room with these massive windows right at the front of the boat so we can take everything in while remaining cool. We are pulling up to Kamombo Temple as we speak. It is right in front of us and it looks so impressive. As we're cruising down the Nile, you just see this temple pop up on the horizon and it looks awesome. So we got to get ready, we got to get going, but we did want to say one thing. Egypt recently introduced a special type of ticket for the temples. If you want to do any sort of filming, you are not allowed unless you pay an extra 300 Egyptian pounds at the time of filming. Otherwise, guards will come up to you and ask to look at your camera and they'll go through and delete your footage in front of you. So we're just kind of going to get B-roll. We're not really going to talk to the camera and we'll do that all after. So enjoy some B-roll.
Let's talk about this temple. We went to Kamombo and we have a guide with us. It's a private guided tour. The temple itself is very pretty. Bear in mind, it's a lot of people. I don't know if we're here at peak season, but yeah, I would say, a couple hundred people in there. It's 103 degrees. It is not all that enjoyable. So this temple is the only example of a twin temple. There are two temples joined as one, each one worshiping a different god. Also, there are depictions all over the walls of the crocodile god, and they have that there because apparently on the island across from this temple there used to be hundreds of crocodiles, which they agreed was a god because it was so powerful. Otherwise, it's surrounded by some pretty aggressive touts. So we knew this would be all across Egypt, but I didn't think we had any idea of how aggressive they are. I will say, our last tour guide that we got for the pyramid, she gave us one crucial piece of advice, and she said, a smile means maybe. Don't smile, just move. It has worked out very well for us so far.
I hope you're not tired of seeing all of our temple footage so far because we've got more coming. Tomorrow morning early at about 5:30 on the agenda is a potential visit to Edfu Temple. You have to take a horse-drawn carriage to get to this temple. It's mandated by the government. It's not a choice that you have to make. And these horses are not taken care of. And it's not something that I'm saying to shame the people that do it. I know they don't really have any other option. This is just how they make their money and they're incredibly poor. But it's just not something that Bree nor I really want to support or be around. And we've heard other guests voice the same complaints. So I think it's something that we're actually going to avoid and maybe skip this temple. Also, it's an early morning wake up. And then we're going to try and do another one. We've got a same but different situation going on outside. I actually thought we were gonna hit these people. So they were just chucking these scarves up to the top deck where people were ordering them. So impressed by the arm strength, but I mean, we were so close to hitting them, I cannot explain it. They were right in front of our boat. They even switched rowers right when we were about to hit them. We laid on the horn really loud and then they just did like a Tokyo drift move, spun around a little bit. They lassoed the side of the boat and then they started selling. Just nuts. And we saw them do it with some of the ships up there, so this must be how they make all of their money. Just a completely different way of life out here.
So right now we are getting ready to go through the lock system, and if you're not familiar with what that is, basically you have to pull your boat into an area and it fills with water so you can move to the next level, and then so on and so forth. And we anticipated a couple of the boat vendors, but I don't think we were ready for just how many. I think I counted up to about 15 of them surrounding our boat at one time. It's just madness. Look at all of these people. They're all selling scarves and towels. Just crazy.
We are just pulling into the port of Luxor, which is the end of our journey, but we still have one more night here actually, and that's because there's so much to do and see here. So this is the ancient city of Thebes. There's Luxor Temple, Karnak Temple, those are the ones we're seeing today, and that's the east bank of Luxor. And then there's the west bank, which we'll be doing tomorrow morning, which is the Valley of the Kings, Hatshepsut. And there's one more. Can't remember the name, we'll tell you when we go see it.
So we went to two different places today. One was Karnak, which is not actually just a temple. It's actually more of a complex of multiple temples, so it's massive. And then we went to the temple of Luxor. I learned two things today. One is that Egypt is very hot, and the second is that there are a lot of tourists in Egypt. Take it away, Jeff.
I too learned some cool things, like just recently they reopened the Way of the Sphinx between both temples, and it's over 1,200 Sphinx statues. So, a common misconception for a lot of people is when they come here, the only Sphinx is in Cairo, but that's not true. They built them all over the place. Both of these temples were dedicated to Amun-Ra, and they were seen as the holiest place in all of Egypt. Now, there is an important thing to know if you're a history buff or an archaeological buff at all. This was the ancient capital of Thebes. This city has been known by many names over the years, but it still maintains a prestigious place in current times. So it's our last night on the cruise, unfortunately. We're packing up our stuff now. We have an early morning tomorrow. He's going to meet us at the lobby of the boat at 7:30. At this point, we will have already eaten breakfast and checked out. And then we're going to head to the last part, the part that I'm most excited for, the Valley of the Kings, which is where King Tut's tomb is, and the Temple of Hatshepsut, which is beautiful, built in kind of to the side of a mountain. It's going to be really, really impressive. See you tomorrow. Welcome to Habut Temple. The crowd just arrived, but we basically were the only people here when we showed up. And this is the start of our last day in Egypt. We're at the Valley of the Kings in a second, and we are just taking this place in. Our guide recommended it, said it's his favorite temple, and I think we both agree that it's ours now too. It's just complete, less busy, beautiful colors still in place, and awesome.
I think we also got it for free because we decided not to go to Edfu.
So it worked out.
So if you come here, you can negotiate with your guide. Welcome to our very last day in Egypt. Right now we are in Luxor and headed to the airport in about 20 minutes. This morning we woke up to a gorgeous view of the Nile River, and I think we got this room for about $90 a night, breakfast included, so it's really not bad. Overall impressions of Egypt, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be given what we read on the internet. However, I want to make it extremely clear that things would have been very different for me had I come as a solo female traveler. Why? Because the harassment that you read online is extremely real. It is very uncomfortable. I have been followed by men here, stared at, catcalled. People have said disgusting things to me. Even hotel staff, the staff on the Nile cruise were staring me down pretty badly. It's just incredibly uncomfortable to be a woman here in general. So I hope I don't get a lot of hate online for this, but yeah, the harassment here is real and it's scary, and I think things very much need to change in Egypt for tourists to be able to feel comfortable here. I can't imagine what it would be like to be a woman living here. That being said, Jeff and I had a really great time at the temples. They're beautiful. Our tour guide was awesome. The heat is uncomfortable. It was about 110 here on one of the hottest days, so if you come here, bring a hat. Getting around was relatively easy, especially in Cairo, because you can use Uber. The rides were super cheap in getting around. I think the most expensive one we took was about $4 USD, and that was all the way to the airport. The only other piece of advice that I have is plan ahead, get a guide. Walking around, again, super uncomfortable. Jeff and I made the fatal mistake of trying to walk from our hotel to a cafe in Cairo, and thank God Jeff was there, because the stares that I got, the calls that I got were so uncomfortable that we didn't leave our hotel again. So most tourists, and from what we hear, this is pretty common when you come to Egypt, they hide out in their hotel rooms and they don't really leave until they go to a temple with a guide, or they do something very specific that's planned ahead of time. Another thing to consider before coming here is that the tipping culture is very real. It is expected on a constant level, to the point that it gets a little bit uncomfortable. In fact, in Cairo, there was a gentleman who just exclusively sat downstairs and waited for tourists to arrive at the hotel. He would literally walk you to the elevator, kind of force his way into the very, very small elevator with you, and then expect a tip when you got to the top. That being said, we did not tip. We don't tip people who follow us around and do things that we don't ask them to do, because we're not going to perpetuate this culture. That being said, when we had staff on the boat or at the hotels, we tipped generously, because it is very much a part of their income, and it's important to consider that. Another thing that should be considered is that when you go to the temple, and this is a very, very common, I don't even know if you can call it a scam, but it's just very much a part of like the temple life, is that there are these guys sitting around the temple. I don't know if they pay for like an entry ticket or if they work there, but they'll say, oh, hey, come and check out this room, and they'll move the ropes for you because tourists aren't supposed to go in there, and they'll let you in. Then they will probably back you into a corner, pressure you for a tip. It's very uncomfortable. Anytime that happens, the answer is just no thank you, and you go away. Just remember that absolutely everything in Egypt is for sale, even going into the holy rooms of the temples where tourists are not supposed to go, which is very sad. We did not do this, but it is something that's very real and you should consider.
Just to give my perspective, Egypt was interesting. It was a place I was probably the most anxious about going to. I'd been here before, and then you read all these things online, but you know, overall it wasn't the worst. It was actually a lot of fun. The people were really nice. I mean, yes, okay, there's definitely a lot of aggressiveness, especially with the touts, but they're all just trying to make money, and I totally get it. And you know, you can see it working on some people, so it only kind of reinforces the stereotypes. The guys at our hotel were incredibly nice. They actually hooked me up with a shisha for free, which was fantastic. I mean, they were just very kind and always willing to kind of go out of their way for us. You know, potentially looking for tips. Maybe that was a motivator, sure, but it was still a very nice experience overall. I will echo what Bree said though. You know, when we went out to go to this cafe, it was only like just a couple blocks away, but guys would pull up on their little tuk-tuks and like say stuff to her while I was standing there with our fake wedding rings on, and they just didn't seem to give a crap that I was standing next to her. So it was rude, a little uncomfortable. Some of the stares are very intense. I've heard similar things about India. And she was dressed incredibly conservatively. You know, nothing really showing, long flowy clothing, very conservative, and it didn't seem to deter them at all. I think if the looks don't really bother you, you won't have a problem, but it is just a little disconcerting while you're walking around. And that's with me there. So maybe if you're by yourself, a solo female traveler, a lot of props if you've done it. I understand why there's a lot of trepidation among females coming here by themselves. And, you know, I think you're right to feel that way. Once you're with a tour guide, I do think things change. They're kind of good about shrugging them off or getting people out of your way. I also think if you're a more seasoned traveler, you probably won't have as many issues because it is easy to just kind of stern face, don't smile. Smile means yes, I'm kind of interested. You know, just say no, thank you, la shukran, and just keep going about your business. I think we should rate this place 1 out of 10 just in case anyone's curious because there are a lot of horror stories, especially on like Reddit, you know, that talk about how bad it is and it's a place they would never come again. This is my second time being here, so I feel like, you know, I have a chance to chime in, and it's not that bad. Would I come again? Probably not, but mostly because I feel like I've seen it. You know, once you've been to the pyramids, the Sphinx, you've gone to some temples, you've done your Nile cruise, there's not much more, at least for me as a traveler, that pulls me here. Overall, I'd rate it 6 out of 10. I've been here, I've seen these things, I've now seen them twice. They're very impressive. You do get temple fatigue just like you do in Asia. The culture's a little intense for me. The people were very nice. It's cheap, or it can be cheap, but it also can be very expensive depending on what you're interested in. I'm glad I did it. I probably don't need to do it again.
Okay, for me, I think I would rate it a 5 out of 10 for a couple reasons. Number one, being a woman is super uncomfortable here. Number two, this I don't know how harshly I can judge on it, but it is something to consider. But the animals are treated very, very bad here, and it's a little sad to see. And number three, you can't really explore, which is one of the best things about being in another country and experiencing the culture. Like I said, you just can't really leave your hotel all that often to walk the streets of Cairo, for example, because it's uncomfortable. But not nearly as bad as they say online. However, this is just our experience. And again, I want to make this very clear for the women out there. Jeff was a shield for me, and so was our tour guide. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you made it this far. I know the temples can be a lot, maybe even a little boring for some of you. Please don't forget to like and subscribe because we are moving on to our next Middle Eastern adventure, and we'll see how that one goes.